I used to think family reunions were about remembering who we were. I thought they were about laughter around a fire, old stories retold, and the comfort of being surrounded by people who've known you your whole life. I didn't know they could also be about discovering who we never were at all. I didn't know that one careless comment, fueled by alcohol and nostalgia, could crack open a secret so deep that everything I believed about my family would shatter in an instant. That weekend, I learned that some truths don't just change your understanding of the past. They rewrite your entire life. And sometimes, the people you trust most are the ones hiding the darkest things. Welcome to my Reddit diaries, where every story reveals the unseen battles within families. Don't forget to subscribe and tell me in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? The cabin sat on the edge of a lake so still it looked like glass. Pine trees surrounded it on 3 sides, and the air smelled like wood smoke and coming rain. I pulled into the gravel driveway just after noon, my wife Sarah beside me, our 2 kids already fighting in the back seat about who got to sleep in the top bunk. It was the first family reunion I'd attended in 2 years, and I wasn't sure why I felt so uneasy about it. Maybe it was the fact that my older brother Marcus had been texting me all week with passive-aggressive reminders about showing up on time. Maybe it was the way my mom's voice had sounded on the phone when she called to confirm I was coming, like she was asking me to do her a favor instead of inviting me to a celebration. Or maybe it was just the weight of being around people who've known you since you were a kid, people who remember every mistake you ever made and every version of yourself you've tried to leave behind. Sarah squeezed my hand as we got out of the car. "It'll be fine," she said. "It's just a weekend." I nodded, but I didn't believe her. Inside, the cabin was already loud with voices. My mom stood in the kitchen, arranging fruit on a platter, her movements quick and practiced. She hugged me tight when she saw me, but there was something distracted in her eyes, like she was already thinking about the next thing she needed to do. My dad sat in the corner of the living room, reading a book, his reading glasses perched on the edge of his nose. He looked up, gave me a nod, and went back to his page. That was my dad. Quiet, steady, the kind of man who never raised his voice and never needed to. Marcus was outside on the deck with his wife and kids, beer in hand, laughing at something my Uncle Ray had just said. Uncle Ray was my dad's younger brother, the loud one, the one who told stories that went on too long and always had a drink in his hand. His wife, my Aunt Linda, stood beside him with her arms crossed, watching him the way you watch a dog you're not sure you can trust. My younger sister Jenna found me first. She hugged me hard, and when she pulled back, her eyes were a little too bright. "I'm glad you're here," she said. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah, just tired. Long drive." But I could tell she wasn't just tired. Jenna had always been the peacekeeper in the family, the one who smoothed over arguments and made sure everyone felt included. She carried that weight like a backpack she could never take off. That first evening felt like every reunion I'd ever been to. We sat around the bonfire after dinner, the kids roasting marshmallows and running wild in the dark. Uncle Ray told the same jokes he'd been telling for 20 years. Marcus talked about his promotion at work. My mom kept getting up to check on things that didn't need checking. And my dad sat in his chair, staring into the fire, saying almost nothing. I felt it then. That warmth you only get when you're surrounded by people who've known you your whole life. But I also felt something else. Something underneath. Like the warmth was a blanket covering something cold. The next night, the drinking started earlier. Uncle Ray was louder, his jokes meaner. He made a comment about my job that was supposed to be funny but wasn't. Marcus laughed. I didn't. My mom kept refilling wine glasses and smiling too much. My dad didn't smile at all. We were all sitting around the fire again when it happened. Uncle Ray was in the middle of a story about the summer of 1984, some trip to the lake they'd all taken before I was born. He was laughing, gesturing with his beer, his words slurring at the edges. "God, that was the summer everything changed, wasn't it?" he said, looking at my dad. "Remember when Linda almost told everyone the truth about Michael? We were so close to losing everything that year." The silence that followed was immediate and absolute. It was the kind of silence that doesn't just stop conversation. It stops time. Aunt Linda's face went pale. My mom stood up so fast her chair tipped backward. My dad's voice cut through the night, low and dangerous. "Shut your mouth." But Uncle Ray just laughed, oblivious or too drunk to care. "What? It's ancient history, man. We all know about it now." "No," my dad said, standing. "We don't." My mom was already walking toward the cabin, her hand over her mouth. Jenna looked at me, her eyes wide with confusion and fear. Marcus was staring at Uncle Ray like he wanted to hit him. And I just sat there, my heart pounding, my mind racing. Who the hell was Michael? The rest of the night was a blur. Uncle Ray tried to apologize, but no one wanted to hear it. Aunt Linda pulled him inside and didn't come back out. My dad disappeared into his room. My mom locked herself in the bathroom. And I stood there with my brother and sister, the 3 of us looking at each other like we'd just woken up in a stranger's house. "What was that?" Jenna whispered. "I don't know," Marcus said. but his jaw was tight, and he wouldn't look at me. I found my parents' door closed, a sliver of light underneath. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again. Not now, my dad said. Dad, who's Michael? Silence. Dad. Go to bed. I stood there for a long moment, my hand on the door, my mind spinning. Then I walked back to the room I was sharing with Sarah and the kids. She was already asleep. I lay down beside her, staring at the ceiling, my thoughts loud and chaotic. Michael. The name felt familiar, but I couldn't place it. And then I remembered. There used to be a photo on the wall at my grandparents' house. A little boy with dark hair and a huge smile. I'd asked about him once when I was a kid. My grandma had said something vague, something about a cousin who'd moved away. But the photo had disappeared after that, and no one ever mentioned him again. I got up and found Jenna sitting on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, her knees pulled to her chest. You can't sleep either, I said. She shook her head. Do you remember a kid named Michael? Sort of. There was a photo. I overheard Mom and Aunt Linda talking once, she said quietly. Years ago. I was maybe 15. They were in the kitchen, and they didn't know I was there. Aunt Linda said something about adoption papers and a baby. Mom told her to stop talking about it. I didn't understand then. But now. Her voice trailed off, and I felt a chill run through me that had nothing to do with the night air. You think Michael was our brother? I asked. Jenna didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was barely a whisper. I think something happened to him. Something bad. And I think they've been hiding it from us our entire lives. I looked out at the lake, black and still under the moonlight. Somewhere out there, buried in the past, was a truth my family had spent decades trying to forget. And now, whether they wanted to or not, it was coming back. I sat down beside my sister, and we didn't say anything else. We just sat there in the dark, listening to the wind move through the trees, knowing that by morning, nothing would ever be the same again. The next morning, the silence was louder than any argument. We all pretended to eat breakfast, but the truth was already eating us alive. I looked around that table and realized I didn't know these people at all. The parents who raised me, the brother who competed with me, the sister who confided in me. They were all strangers now, connected by a secret they didn't even know they were keeping. And somewhere in the past, buried beneath years of silence, was a boy named Michael who nobody would talk about. I was about to discover that some truths don't just hurt when you find them. They hurt because you realize everyone you love chose to hide them from you. Breakfast was a performance. My mom moved around the kitchen with forced energy, flipping pancakes nobody wanted. My dad sat at the head of the table, his coffee untouched, staring at nothing. Uncle Ray and Aunt Linda had already packed their car and left before sunrise. No goodbyes, no explanations. Marcus ate in silence, his jaw tight, while his wife tried to make small talk with Sarah. The kids sensed something was wrong and stayed quiet. And Jenna kept looking at me like she was waiting for me to do something. I couldn't eat. My stomach was twisted in knots. Every time I looked at my parents, I felt anger rising in my chest, hot and insistent. Finally, I pushed my plate away. We need to talk about last night. My mom's hand froze on the spatula. My dad didn't look up. There's nothing to talk about, Marcus said. Uncle Ray got drunk and said something stupid. It happens. He mentioned a name, I said. Michael. And both of you acted like the world was ending. My dad set his mug down slowly. Let it go. Let it go. I felt my voice rising. Who is Michael? He's nobody, my mom said quickly. Too quickly. Ray was confused. He was talking about someone from a long time ago. It doesn't matter. If it doesn't matter, then why did you run out of there crying? Why did Dad threaten to kill him? I didn't threaten anyone, my dad said, his voice hard. Marcus stood up. Enough. You're making this worse than it needs to be. Just drop it. Why are you defending them? I looked at my brother, searching his face for something, anything. Don't you want to know what they're hiding? No, Marcus said flatly. I don't. Because whatever it is, it's their business, not ours. He left the table. His wife followed, ushering their kids outside. Jenna sat frozen, her eyes darting between our parents and me. Sarah touched my arm gently, a warning, but I pulled away. I'm going for a walk, I said. I didn't wait for a response. Outside, the morning air was cold and damp. I walked toward the lake, my hands shoved deep in my pockets, my mind racing. The worst part wasn't that they were lying. The worst part was that they were doing it together. All of them. Even Marcus, who'd always been the golden child, was choosing their side over the truth. I stood at the water's edge, staring out at the gray expanse, and that's when I decided. If they wouldn't tell me, I'd find out myself. I waited until my parents left the cabin to take the kids on a nature walk. Sarah went with them, giving me a look that said she didn't approve but wouldn't stop me. The moment they were gone, I went to their room. The guilt hit me immediately. I was invading their privacy, crossing a line I'd never crossed before. But I couldn't stop. I needed to know. I started with the dresser drawers. Nothing. Then the closet. I moved jackets and shoes aside, feeling along the top shelf, and that's when my fingers brushed against cardboard. I pulled it down. A shoebox, old and worn, the lid held on with a rubber band. My hands were shaking as I opened it. Photographs. Dozens of them. A little boy with dark curly hair and my father's eyes. He was smiling in every picture. On a swing set. Holding a stuffed bear. Sitting on my mom's lap. And in every photo, my parents looked younger, happier, whole in a way I'd never seen them. Beneath the photos, I found hospital bracelets, tiny and faded. A birth certificate. Michael James, our last name. Born March 14, 1982. My breath caught when I saw the second document. A death certificate. August 19, 1984. Cause of death, accidental drowning. Michael wasn't just a name. He was my brother. And he died when he was 2 years old. I kept digging. There was a police report, the pages yellowed and brittle. I read the words slowly, my heart pounding. Unsupervised. Residential lake. No signs of foul play. No charges filed. The report was clinical, detached, like it was describing a statistic instead of a child. At the bottom of the box, folded and refolded so many times the creases had worn thin, was a letter. It was in my father's handwriting, addressed to Michael but never sent. I'm sorry I wasn't watching. I'm sorry I let you fall in. I'm sorry I couldn't save you. Every day I wake up and remember what I did, and every day I wish it had been me instead. Your mother tells me it wasn't my fault, but she's wrong. I was your father. I was supposed to protect you. I don't deserve to be called your father. I don't deserve anything. I read it twice. Then a third time. And then I couldn't see the words anymore because my eyes were blurred with tears. I don't know how long I sat there on the floor of their room, the letter in my hands, the truth finally in front of me. My entire life I'd thought I was the oldest. But I wasn't. I was the second chance. The do-over. The child they had to replace the one they lost. When the door opened behind me, I didn't turn around. I already knew who it was. You had no right to go through our things, my dad said. I stood up slowly, the letter still in my hand. And you had no right to lie to me for 30 years. We didn't lie. You just never told the truth. What's the difference? I turned to face him. My mom was standing in the doorway behind him, her face pale. I had a brother. He died. And you never thought I deserved to know. My dad's face was stone, but I could see the cracks. We thought we were protecting you. Protecting me from what? From knowing I wasn't your first kid? From understanding why you've always been so distant, so careful, so afraid to let us actually live. That's not fair, my mom said, her voice breaking. None of this is fair, I shot back. You made us grow up in the shadow of a ghost we didn't even know existed. We were trying to move forward, my dad said. We were trying to give you a normal life. By pretending he never existed? By erasing him? I held up the letter. You wrote this. You admitted it was your fault. And then you just buried it and had more kids like that would fix it. My dad's control finally shattered. What did you want me to do? I fell asleep. For 10 minutes, I closed my eyes, and when I opened them, he was gone. Do you know what that feels like? Do you have any idea what it's like to know that your child died because you weren't paying attention? The room went silent. My mom was crying now, her hand over her mouth. My dad's eyes were red, his jaw trembling. We couldn't talk about him, my mom said softly. If we talked about him, we'd have to feel it. And if we felt it, we'd never survive. I looked at them, really looked at them, and for the first time in my life, I saw them as people instead of parents. Broken people. People who'd made a terrible mistake and spent 40 years trying to outrun it. He was real, I said quietly. He was your son. And he deserved better than being forgotten. My dad sank onto the edge of the bed, his head in his hands. My mom sat beside him. And I stood there with the box, the photos, the letter, and the weight of a truth that changed everything. Outside, I heard voices. Marcus and Jenna were back. They'd find out soon. We all would. And nothing would ever be the same again. The truth doesn't fix everything. It doesn't erase the pain or undo the years of silence. But it does one thing lies can never do. It sets you free. That afternoon, sitting by the lake with my family, I learned that healing doesn't begin with forgiveness. It begins with honesty. With saying the words that have been buried too long. With looking at the broken pieces and deciding they're worth putting back together, even if they'll never fit the same way again. This is the story of how my family stopped pretending and started becoming real. I found Marcus first. He was sitting on the deck, staring at his phone, pretending everything was normal. I dropped the shoebox on the table in front of him. Open it, I said. He looked up at me. What is this? Just open it. He did. I watched his face as he pulled out the photos, the birth certificate, the death certificate. I watched the confusion turn to shock, then to something harder to name. Anger, maybe. or grief for something he'd never known he'd lost. We had a brother, he said quietly. Yeah. And they never told us. Marcus set the papers down carefully, like they might break. How did he die? Drowned. Dad was watching him. He fell asleep. Michael went into the water. Marcus didn't say anything for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was tight. So our whole lives were just what? A way for them to feel better about killing their first kid. Don't, I said. Don't what? Don't be angry? Don't feel like everything I ever did was just me trying to fill a hole I didn't even know existed? He stood up. You know why Dad was always so hard on me? Why nothing I did was ever good enough? Because I wasn't Michael. None of us were. Jenna appeared in the doorway. She'd been listening. Her face was streaked with tears. Is it true? I nodded. She walked over slowly, picked up one of the photos, and stared at it. The little boy smiling back at her could have been any of us. He had our father's eyes, our mother's smile. He looks happy, she whispered. He was 2 years old, I said. He didn't know anything bad could happen. The three of us stood there in silence, holding pieces of a past we'd never been part of. And then our parents came outside. My mom's eyes were red and swollen. My dad looked like he'd aged 10 years in an hour. They saw the box, saw us holding the evidence of their secret, and neither of them said a word. We're going to talk about this, I said. All of us. Right now. We sat around the fire pit, even though there was no fire. Sarah had taken the kids to town for ice cream, giving us space. It was just the 5 of us, and 40 years of silence sitting between us like a wall. Say something, Marcus said to our parents. My dad's voice was rough. What do you want me to say? Start with the truth. So he did. He told us about the summer of 1984. About how Michael had been their world, their first baby, the one who made them feel like real adults for the first time. About how that August afternoon, he'd been watching Michael by the lake while my mom ran errands. About how tired he'd been from work, how he'd sat down in a lawn chair just for a minute, how the sun was warm and the sound of the water was peaceful. I closed my eyes, he said. Just for a few minutes. That's all it was. A few minutes. When he woke up, Michael was gone. He found him floating in the water, face down, his little arms spread out like he was swimming. My dad pulled him out, tried CPR, screamed for help. By the time the ambulance came, it was too late. The police investigated, my mom said, her voice hollow. They asked us questions, looked at everything. They said it was an accident. They said these things happen. But it didn't feel like an accident. It felt like we'd murdered him. The family wanted us to talk about it, my dad continued. Your grandparents, Ray, Linda, everyone. They wanted us to grieve together, to process it. But we couldn't. Every time someone said his name, it was like living it all over again. So we decided to move forward, my mom said. We packed up his things. We took down his photos. We stopped talking about him. And eventually we had you. She looked at me. You were supposed to be our second chance. A way to prove we could still be good parents. That we deserved another try. Marcus let out a bitter laugh. So that's what we were. Redemption projects. No, my dad said sharply. You were our children. We loved you. We still love you. But you never let us know him, Jenna said softly. You never let us be part of his story. Because we wanted to protect you from our pain, my mom said. We thought if we never talked about it, you'd never have to carry it. But we did carry it, I said. We just didn't know what we were carrying. The silence that followed was heavy. Marcus stood up, walked to the edge of the deck, his back to us. Jenna wiped her eyes. And I looked at my parents, these 2 people who'd raised me, and saw them clearly for the first time. They weren't perfect. They weren't even whole. They were just 2 broken people who tried their best and failed in ways they'd never meant to. Read them the letter, I said to my dad. No. Read it. He picked up the letter with shaking hands. And he read it out loud, every word, his voice breaking on almost every line. When he finished, my mom was sobbing. Marcus had turned around, his eyes wet. Jenna had her arms wrapped around herself. I'm sorry, my dad said. I'm so sorry. For all of it. We should have told you, my mom added. We should have been honest. We thought we were protecting you, but we were just protecting ourselves. I stood up and walked over to my dad. You're not a monster. You're just a man who made a mistake. And you've punished yourself long enough. He looked up at me, tears streaming down his face. I don't know how to stop. By letting us help you, I said. By letting Michael be real again. And that's what we did. We spent the rest of that afternoon talking about Michael. My parents shared stories we'd never heard. The way he laughed when my dad tickled him. The way he loved scrambled eggs and refused to eat anything green. The way he said, I love you, as, I loo you, and how it made everyone melt. Marcus softened as he listened. I always felt like I was trying to live up to something impossible, he admitted. Now I know why. I felt like I was never enough, Jenna said. Like there was always something missing. There was, my mom said. But it wasn't your fault. It was ours. Before we left the next morning, we did something we should have done 40 years ago. We stood by the lake, all 5 of us, and we said goodbye to Michael. My dad planted a small tree, a sapling that would grow over the years. We didn't have a ceremony or say anything formal. We just stood there, together, acknowledging that he'd existed. That he'd mattered. That he still did. My kids asked what we were doing. I knelt down beside them. We're honoring your Uncle Michael. You never got to meet him. But he was part of this family. And he always will be. As we packed up to leave, Marcus pulled me aside. I need some time, he said, to process all this. I know. But I'm glad you didn't let it go. I'm glad you pushed. Jenna hugged both our parents before she left, holding them longer than usual. I love you, she told them. Even with all of this. Sarah and I were the last to leave. I stood at the car, looking back at the cabin, at the lake, at my parents standing on the deck. They looked smaller somehow. More fragile. But also more real. On the drive home, Sarah asked me if I was okay. I don't know, I said honestly. But I think we will be. That night, after the kids were asleep, I sat on our back porch and thought about everything that had happened. I thought about Michael, the brother I'd never met. I thought about my parents, carrying their guilt like stones for 40 years. I thought about Marcus and Jenna, finally understanding why they'd always felt like something was missing. And I realized something. Families don't heal by pretending the past didn't happen. They heal by facing it even when it's ugly, even when it hurts. Because the truth, no matter how painful, is still lighter than the weight of a lie carried for decades. Sometimes chaos isn't destruction. It's transformation. The moment everything falls apart is also the moment you can finally start putting it back together the right way. And sometimes the bravest thing a family can do is stop hiding and start healing. Michael's life was short, but his absence taught us something his presence never could. That love isn't about perfection. It's about truth. And the people worth keeping in your life are the ones brave enough to face that truth with you, no matter how much it hurts. 3 months later, I went back to that lake. The tree we'd planted was still there, a little taller now, its roots reaching deep into the earth. I stood there for a while, just me and the water and the wind, and I talked to a brother I'd never known. I told him about his family, about how broken we'd been, and how we were learning to heal. I told him he was loved, that he was remembered, that he'd never really been gone, just hidden. And that now, finally, he was home. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe to my Reddit diaries for more real stories about family, truth, and the courage it takes to face the past. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever discovered a family secret that changed everything? I read every single one. And if you know someone who needs to hear this story, share it with them. Sometimes the stories that break us are the ones that help us heal. I'll see you in the next one.